At the start of the course, I mentioned our brains automatically adjust for any kind of color casting around us and make the world seem as normal as possible. Whether we're in sunlight or a room lit with artificial lights, we tend to perceive the color of skin tone and everything else around us as being normal and don't think too much about it. The camera doesn't handle the color of light in the same way. You may have noticed when examining images you've shot that the colors didn't look the same as you remembered during the shoot. The shots may have a bluish, greenish, or yellowish look to them. The reason for this is that images shot in different sources of light have a different color or temperature to them. Fluorescent lights add a blue-green cast, while tungsten or incandescent light bulbs add a yellowish tint. When it's in automatic, the camera's white balance control will adjust for some variations in light. But for accurate color renditions, it's really up to us to decide when the colors look right and tell the camera what to do about it. To understand the concept of white balance, you need to first understand the concept of color temperature. Color temperature is a characteristic of visible light, where there's more red in lower temperatures and more blue at higher temperatures. It's measured in the Kelvin scale, which is why you'll sometimes see a capital K after the number. The table shows the color temperature of various sources of light. Notice that each section is represented by a range of color temperatures. Daylight is around 5,500 degrees Kelvin. Overcast conditions are around 6,500 degrees. Shade even higher, around 7,500. If you go online and look around, you'll see there are many opinions, and it's basically because each value is part of a range of values. If you've poked around in your camera settings, you will have noticed that the camera has some presets for white balance. Why not just use one of these and be done with it? Let's look at it this way. If you're listening to a radio and press one of the buttons, the radio goes to a particular station on the dial. But there are many other stations close by on either side of that point. It's kind of the same thing with the white balance presets. The preset will take you to a particular value, but chances are the actual value may be on this or that side of that preset value. It's possible to make fine adjustments in the color balance or even set a custom white balance in your camera. If you're shooting JPEGs, you'll need to take care of it because JPEGs lock the white balance setting into the image and it can be difficult to fix it later. During your test shots, setting the white balance would be done right after setting the ISO. Think of it as step 1A. I prefer to avoid the entire problem of getting the correct white balance during the shoot. I find it's more important to look through the viewfinder and concentrate on getting the right emotion for the shot or capture that special fleeting moment that'll never be the same again. I choose to make the white balance decision later in post-production. When shooting in RAW, the white balance is not locked in and can be easily changed at any time. Let's see this in action using Lightroom from Adobe. This is a RAW file depicting a scene from Harborville, a small fishing village in my area. This image was taken about 3 o'clock in the afternoon under partly cloudy conditions, and the sun was behind the clouds during the shot. For this example, I have deliberately set the white balance to the cool side, and as a result there's a bluish overcast in the image. The white balance tool has 2 sliders and a white balance selector tool associated with it. The top slider makes the image cooler as the slider moves to the left, bringing the temperature down as it goes, or raises the temperature value, giving us warmer results as the slider is moved to the right. The second slider is a tint control, adding green as the slider moves to the left, and magenta as the slider moves to the right. The white balance selector tool, which looks like this eyedropper, allows me to click on a neutral area of the image, and when I do this, Lightroom will pick a white balance value for me. The result is much better than before. But I think I'd prefer the shot to be a little warmer. I know that overcast conditions should be close to 6,000 degrees Kelvin, so let's move the slider to the right and see what happens. I think I prefer this white balance setting. So while we have some guidelines for where the white balance value should sit, the actual value we decide is correct is subjective, and something I wouldn't want to lock into the image during the shoot. It's one of the reasons I shoot in RAW, so I can make the white balance decision after the shoot in post-production. This leads us into the discussion of whether it's better to shoot in RAW or JPEG. We'll check it out in the next lesson.